The morning air outside the downtown courthouse was brisk, carrying the smell of roasted beans from the nearby cafe and the faint chatter of people rushing to hearings. Aisha Coleman stood by the courthouse steps, clutching a folder of documents against her chest. Her hands trembled slightly. Not from fear, but from exhaustion. She had been up all night preparing. Notes for a case that meant more to her than any she'd ever worked on. Dressed in a simple navy suit and worn heels, she exuded quiet confidence despite the weight she carried. Asterisk. He had just taken a sip of her coffee when two police officers stepped out from a patrol car parked nearby. They were laughing about something, their voices loud enough to turn heads. When they noticed Aisha standing there, their laughter shifted to smirks. Asterisk. Hey, you lost, sweetheart. One of them called out. He was tall, with a buzz cut and mirrored sunglasses that hid his eyes. Asterisk. Aisha straightened her posture, offering a polite but firm smile. No, officer. Just waiting for court to open. Asterisk. The other officer, shorter and broader, tilted his coffee cup toward her. Court, huh? You a witness or something? I'm here for work, Aisha replied evenly. That only made them laugh harder. Work? What kind of work you doing there, huh? Custodial. Asterisk. Her jaw tightened. She'd heard it all before: assumptions, condescension, the disbelief that a black woman could belong in a place of authority or intellect. She refused to let them see her irritation. No, not custodial, she said, adjusting her blazer. I'm an attorney. Asterisk. The tall officer barked out a laugh so hard he nearly spilled his coffee. An attorney. That's a good one. Where's your boss then? Asterisk. Aisha's eyes met his directly. You're looking at her? Asterisk. Something in her tone made him pause for a moment, but only briefly. Well, he said, his smirk returning. Hope your clients don't depend on you too much. He gestured to her coffee cup. Here, maybe you should cool off before you go inside. Asterisk. And before she could react, he tilted his wrist and poured his hot coffee down the front of her blazer. Asterisk. The brown liquid soaked through the fabric, dripping onto her blouse and staining the white shirt beneath. Aisha gasped softly, both from the heat and the humiliation. People on the steps turned to look, some whispering, others averting their eyes. The shorter cop chuckled, not even trying to hide it. Asterisk. Oh, come on, the tall one said, pretending innocence. It was an accident. Asterisk. Aisha's throat tightened. Her instinct screamed to lash out, to say something sharp enough to cut through their arrogance, but she knew better. She breathed deeply, her composure unbroken, even as the coffee cooled on her skin. Asterisk. Accidents happen, she said quietly, pulling a handkerchief from her pocket to dab at the stain. You two have a good day. Asterisk. As she turned to walk toward the courthouse doors, one of them called after her. Yeah, good luck in there, sweetheart. You'll need it. Asterisk. She didn't respond. She just kept walking one steady step after another until she disappeared through the glass doors of the courthouse. Inside, a security guard who had witnessed the scene shook his head. Asterisk. Some people got no shame, he muttered. Asterisk. Aisha went straight to the restroom, locking herself in a stall. Her reflection in the mirror showed a woman who had endured worse and would endure again, but her eyes held a storm. She cleaned up as best she could, then straightened her tie, dabbed concealer on the coffee-stained patch of her blouse, and whispered to herself, hold your head high. Asterisk. Outside, the same officers laughed and bragged about teaching her a lesson. They had no idea who she really was. Asterisk. 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 Scene to an hour later. The courtroom filled with murmurs as everyone took their seats. The two officers were seated near the front, in uniform, still smirking as they talked with a city prosecutor. It was a simple disciplinary hearing, one they'd been called to testify at. Asterisk. The bailiff entered and called out, all rise for the Honorable Judge Coleman. Asterisk. The officer stood, Still chatting casually till the door behind the bench opened. Aisha Coleman stepped out. Her navy robes flowing gracefully, her expression calm but commanding. The same woman they'd mocked and humiliated now stood at the highest point in the room. The judge's bench. The taller officer's grin froze instantly. The shorter one blinked, his mouth parting slightly. The prosecutor turned to glance at them, confused by their sudden silence. Judge Coleman set her files down neatly, adjusted her glasses, and looked over the courtroom. "You may be seated," she said, her voice firm and resonant. She scanned the docket, her eyes finally settling on the two officers. The same two who had poured coffee on her not even an hour before. They shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "Before we begin," she said evenly, "I'd like to remind everyone in this courtroom that professionalism and respect are not optional, they are required." Her gaze lingered on the officers just long enough to make her point. The tall one swallowed hard, beads of sweat forming near his temple. Throughout the hearing, she conducted herself with grace, intellect, and quiet authority. She quoted law flawlessly, dissected arguments with precision, and held the courtroom in absolute control. Every time she spoke, the same officers who had once mocked her now sat with their eyes lowered, as if afraid to meet her gaze. At the end of the session, when their matter was called, she looked directly at them. Officers Daniels and Price stepped forward. They rose stiffly, glancing at each other before approaching the bench. She read from her notes. "It seems you're here regarding an incident involving misconduct during duty hours. You'll find that this court takes such matters very seriously." Her tone was measured. She didn't let a hint of personal emotion seep through, but her words carried weight. The officers nodded, stammering, "Yes, Your Honor," in unison. Judge Coleman leaned back slightly. "You may proceed with your testimony." As they spoke, fumbling through their words, the irony hung thick in the air. The very woman they had tried to humiliate was now the one holding their fate in her hands. When the hearing concluded, she gave a small nod to the bailiff. "This court is adjourned." The sound of her gavel echoed through the room sharp, final, powerful. As the crowd dispersed, the officers lingered for a moment, unable to meet her eyes. One of them muttered an apology under his breath, barely audible. Judge Coleman simply gathered her papers and said calmly, "Next time, gentlemen, think before you act." And with that, she walked out through the same doors they had watched her enter earlier that morning this time, with every head in the courtroom turned in silent awe. Would you like me to create image prompts and a full YouTube SEO package title description, tags, hashtags, keywords, and disclaimer for this story too?